Washington waits as reports of charges in Robert Mueller's Russia investigation continue to swirl. Those reports say an arrest could come as early as tomorrow, but there's still no word on who the charges have been filed against. Republican Governor Chris Christie weighed in on the investigation this morning. Listen.
Believe me, if you're the person, you know. I mean, you've already been told you're a target. Your lawyers have been, if you've been asked to come into the grand jury, they've got to advise you of your status as to whether you're a target. If you've been told you're a target, believe me, you're not sleeping well anyway.
Garrett Tenney joins us now, live in studio with more. Garrett, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Jillian, we all know that a lack of facts and information has never stopped folks in Washington from speculating. And we have seen that a lot over the last couple of days, since Friday when reports came out about these charges being filed. What we know, according to reporting by the Wall Street Journal and others, is that prosecutors from special counsel Robert Mueller's team presented evidence to a grand jury on Friday. And whatever that evidence was, it was enough to convince the jury to sign off on charges against one or more individuals. A federal judge sealed that indictment, which is supposed to keep it secret, and an arrest could be made as soon as tomorrow. This morning on ABC's This Week, Congressman Adam Schiff, who is the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said there is plenty of evidence out there to suggest who these charges might be against.
Well, I think just from press reporting that it is likely to be either Mike Flynn or Paul Manafort. We haven't been informed of who it is, and I don't think it would have been appropriate for Bob Mueller to tell us.
Earlier this summer, FBI agents raided the home of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. And Manafort, who is being investigated for alleged money laundering and tax issues, according to the Wall Street Journal, has reportedly told others he expects that at some point he will be indicted. His attorneys, though, tell us they have not been informed of any charges being filed against their client, which would typically happen following an indictment. We know President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, is also a target of the FBI's investigation over allegations that he attempted to work with Russian hackers during the campaign to get copies of Hillary Clinton's emails. His attorneys have not responded to our multiple requests for comment. While those are the two we've heard the most about, it's also entirely possible that neither has been charged. And on Sunday, Fox News Sunday, Congressman Trey Gowdy, a former federal prosecutor himself, said at this point, it's impossible to say how big of a deal these charges are.
It's going to be really important whether or not this indictment involves 15-year-old business transactions or 15-day-old conversations with Russia. So it's really important what the charge is. It's really important who the person being charged is.
Now, those facts of who is being charged with what will really determine what we're able to learn from this indictment and what it means to the investigation as a whole going forward.
Well, thanks for that, Garrett. It definitely seems like there's a lot of folks on the edge of their seats gearing up for an anxious night overnight today while we're waiting for that tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Leland?
And as we wait for that, President Trump says Republicans are uniting behind him against what he calls a Democratic witch hunt. The president making those claims on Twitter this morning, asking why there isn't an investigation into the Clinton campaigns allegedly paying for a Russian dossier of opposition research. Caroline Shively joins us now to detangle the web on this. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Leland. This morning, President Trump said Democrats should quit looking at him over the dossier that claims his campaign had ties to Russia and focus on the fact that the Clinton campaign helped pay for it. The president tweeted in part, "They look at phony Trump-Russia collusion, which doesn't exist. The Dems are using this terrible and bad for our country witch hunt for evil politics." The dossier claims that the Russian government helped Mr. Trump's campaign win and tried to gather dirt on him for potential blackmail. It was put together by former British spy Christopher Steele. Steele shared some of his findings with the FBI around the same time the Bureau launched its investigation. Part of it is unsubstantiated rumor, but other parts echo an assessment by U.S. intelligence agencies that says Russia intervened in the election.
If they relied on that dossier and they didn't corroborate it or vet it, then we have a serious issue. And that's the next thing that House Intel is trying to find out, is whether or not the U.S. government relied on it.
The firm behind the dossier, Fusion GPS, was paid more than $12 million by a law firm working for the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. But the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee says there's a more important question than who wrote the check.
It doesn't answer the ultimate question, which is how much of the work is accurate, how much of it is true. And my colleagues don't seem particularly interested in that question, but that is really the most important question for the American people, and that is, how much of this allegation that Christopher Steele makes and the reports that he hears are true about the Russian government wanting to help the Trump campaign. Now, a lot of that has been corroborated.
Today, Republican Senator Susan Collins said that representatives from the DNC and the Clinton campaign should have to retestify about the dossier funding before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Leland?
Yeah, we know some involved in the dossier have already taken the fifth on that as well. Caroline Shively here in Washington. Caroline, thank you. Jillian's got more.
I want to bring in Julia Manchester from The Hill for more details on this. Julia, thanks so much for joining us. I want to start out with, just so we're all on the same page, to get a couple of procedural points right on what's going on right now. I want to hear from you on what is a sealed indictment exactly, and then what kind of charges, what are the range of charges that can be contained in something like this? We keep reading that they've got to be criminal. Is that true?
Yeah. So we won't actually know what the indictment is until tomorrow, Monday, about it. And I mean, it could be a range of charges, but we honestly don't know too much about what's going to happen tomorrow. This could be someone as big as Michael Flynn, as the report mentioned before, or a more low-level person.
Do we know that they're going to relate to the original intent of the investigation, which is to look into President Trump's campaign colluding with the Kremlin, or could this be something else entirely?
This could be something else entirely, to be honest. I mean, this investigation has been going on for about a year now, so Mueller was brought on in May, but this could be something from before as well.
Okay, and what tomorrow, once the sealed indictment is unsealed, what happens from there? Is there a clear chain of events that this sort of kicks into gear?
Yeah. So we'll see what happens from there. I mean, I think it depends, honestly, who it is. So this could be, I've been hearing theories, this could be a more low-level person, and this could be an indictment that would maybe pressure that a low-level player in this situation to maybe, get someone else indicted, like in the future. So it could lead to future indictments, if that makes sense. This could be this is going to be a rolling investigation. It seems that this is the way Robert Mueller has conducted that.
And so once it is unsealed and the indictment is formalized, is the individual who is the target arrested necessarily, or is what happens exactly kind of on the ground?
Yeah. So I mean, it'll be revealed, and I think they'll recommend those charges. And I mean, honestly, I mean, we don't know too much about what's going to happen, but we'll see in the future.
Mark Corallo, a former spokesperson for President Trump's legal team, said recently that, I think it was yesterday, he said it's unusual for prosecutors to file indictments under seal and then have them leak out. Is that true also?
Well, so we heard Chris Christie say today that he clearly wasn't happy with this right now. We don't know who's going to be indicted at the end of the day, so it's not like it's been entirely leaked, I guess, at this point. So
I guess just the timing was leaked.
Yes, the timing was leaked. I mean, it could happen, potentially.
So it's not necessarily indicative that there is something malevolent involved here.
Yeah,
that there is
not
something
necessarily
politically motivated in the release of Monday as the date.
Not necessarily, but we saw the president tweet today. He was saying, "Oh, it's funny that this is coming out before Wednesday when we're supposed to work on tax reform and potentially pass it." So, I mean, it does lead to those questions. Absolutely.
Finally, I want to just talk about the rest of the White House, outside of the president. It's hard to imagine that this is easy to deal with, that it is good for staff morale. Things like this tend to subsume any White House that is, the subject of an investigation. But reporting as of yesterday is that some of the folks on the Trump communications team were caught sort of flat-footed. They didn't realize that an indictment would be coming so soon. Have you heard anything about that from your sources at the White House?
I mean, I think absolutely they were caught flat-footed and they didn't see this coming. However, we've seen that Mueller has almost kind of started to close in on the White House. Earlier this month, he's interviewing former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus as well as Sean Spicer. So, I mean, it is a bit of a surprise for them.
Sounds like there's a whole host of surprises in store for lots of folks. So we'll keep our eye on this and hope to talk to you about it some more.
Thank you so much.
Julia, thanks for joining us. Leland?
Well, something that's certainly dividing the nation as well, the investigation by special counsel Robert Mueller into Russia's election meddling. And reportedly, the special prosecutor has filed his first charges. Fox News has not yet been able to independently verify who the special counsel would indict or what the charges are, but reports say the person could be taken into custody as soon as tomorrow. Let's bring in our panel. Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Scott Bolden, former DNC chair. Gentlemen, nice to see you as always.
Thank you.
Dovetailing off of what Jillian said, this poll about how dysfunctional politics seems, that it is almost a guarantee that no matter who is indicted or what they are indicted for, Republicans will run and say they didn't do anything wrong. Democrats will say they did terrible things wrong. This is evidence of collusion between President Trump and the Russians. Have we lost sight, Brad, of absolute rights and absolute wrongs in America, and now it's only politics?
Absolutely. There's no, room anymore for issues. Issues seem to take a second tier to confusion or to charges or to politics of personal destruction. And that's what's sad, because we got some real problems here in the United States, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. We have massive debt. We have a insurgency all over the world of terrorism. There are some real things that we have to solve, and it seems all to get lost in the politics of gotcha. And what I hope happens tomorrow is that if there are any indictments that come down, it's for their personal behavior and not in collusion either with the Russians or with the campaigns.
Scott, it seems as though Democrats, while Brad's thought is probably what would be best for the country, is that hopefully people who are entrusted and are part of the upper echelons of government wouldn't do anything that is beyond their own personal behavior. Democrats seem to be almost hoping for an indictment that would be a collusion step forward.
Well, I think the Democrats would be arguing that if you're engaged in bad behavior, then that's why the special prosecutor is there. If this is connected to Donald Trump or his campaign, then that's really making the country better simply because it's weeding out bad behavior, in this case, criminal behavior. And you can't really argue with that. The other part is the collusion piece.
Don't worry.
They certainly will. But the other issue is the collusion part. While not a crime in and of itself, if the facts and the body of the indictment that support the charges connects the White House or Trump's campaign or senior people, look for that in the indictment, because then this moves from hoax and fake news to reality, if you will.
But there is also a reality that it at least appears right now that the Clinton campaign is the same people who were funding Fusion GPS that created this dossier. Bob Driscoll, former senior official of the DOJ, on yesterday about this issue.
Certainly politically, it muddies the waters a great deal, because both sides have to kind of be a little bit careful about how absolute they want to make their statements about how serious the crimes involved are, because it looks like any potential allegation from either party could boomerang the other way.
We seem to have this happening a little bit. You're both smiling here if we have the two-shot, because
it's a distraction.
But at the same time, you're seeing these absolute statements from both sides. This is a crime. This is terrible. And then all of a sudden, when that side, your side's accused of the same thing, Brad, all of a sudden, oh, no, never mind, that's not that big of a deal.
When they do it, it's opposition research. When we do it, it's collusion. But I think Democrats, as a lawyer, have much more exposure criminally, because they're the ones, either the DNC, the Clinton campaign, or both, who paid millions of dollars to Putin's operatives for opposition research. The Trump people didn't pay anything. A Republican operative may have paid for it, but certainly the operative was not part of the campaign as we know it now. It wasn't directed, but they benefited. They benefited Putin with Fusion GPS to the tune of millions of dollars directly. So, be careful what you wish for.
Let me tell you why my colleague is just dead wrong, not just wrong. Okay?
Shocking that you would feel this way.
The Republicans drove this narrative. The Republican operatives are the one that hired Fusion in the first place, and then you had this dossier. The Democrats, because of opposition research, certainly paid, but the GOP certainly paid more.
It wasn't the GOP. It wasn't the GOP.
It was his operative with deep connections to the GOP. Now, the dossier, hold on one second. That's just a fact. There's no doubt about that. And the dossier exists.
Hold on, Chris. There's a point here that it seems as though facts are no longer facts anymore, Brad. That even what is a quote-unquote fact depends really on what side you're on.
Right. And you let the facts suit your own political bent. But one thing is for sure. Hillary Clinton and the DNC paid millions of dollars to a Putin operative, Fusion GPS, for dirt on Donald Trump.
That existed already because the Republicans had paid for it and contracted it out. They did.
A third party who was not connected either to the campaign or the party. There's a huge difference.
I think we
pull the FEC reports. Hold on. Pull the FEC reports, guys, and let's see how much they spent on it.
I think a judge in any court, though, would hold you both in contempt, but you are arguing vigorously for your sides. Gentlemen, thanks as always. Pleasure.